New freewheeling Ford GTS is FOMOCO's fastest 1974 flyer. For 1974, Ford has restyled its intermediate Grand Torino hardtop on a shorter 114-inch wheelbase, aiming for more personal luxury long hood proportions. The new Elite Torino, Ford's late entry into the mini Eldorado personal car fray, will share sheet metal with the new Mercury Cougar, which has been transformed into an intermediate. Ford didn't want to give up any passenger space, so it now only offers the formal roof and mounts the seat back closer to the rear wheels. At 79.3 inches, the Grand Torino is nearly as wide as the LTD, so there's little difference in hip room. The shorter wheelbase Torino conforms to a more advantageous rule for under 115-inch wheelbase cars instituted by NASCAR last year. Ford race cars will now use a 352 cubic inch V8, which is not required to run a throttle plate restrictor instead of the 429, which now goes with the longer 118-inch wheelbase. Drivers said they like the stability of the 118-inch wheelbase fastback Torino, but on road courses, the Riverside or Laguna Seca, the shorter wheelbase is better. The new shorter Grand Torino Sport, or GTS, offers a wild new freewheeling package. It includes a custom paint job, stiffer coil springs, a 325-to-1 axle ratio, Blackwall radial ply tires, and lightweight forged aluminum wheels, the namesake of the freewheeling package. Rear wheels are wider than the fronts for the hot rod look, and the rear HR60 radial tires have double the contact area of 1960s wide ovals. The lighter wheels and sticky tires increase acceleration, braking, and handling performance by increasing traction and decreasing unsprung weight. Because it's impossible to cover red paint with a completely opaque white, the car is first painted white, then with the stripe area masked off, it's painted red. Like Freedom itself, freewheeling isn't free, as the option alone boosts the price by $800. We first viewed the freewheeling GTS as a reflection of Ford's recent statement that performance has become more about trim, fat tires and wheels, not engines. Ford mavens we spoke with insisted that the quote was taken out of context. Because most Torinos are now getting a V8 engine standard for 74, the lighter aluminum wheels themselves offer a performance advantage, so Ford's fastest car is named for the wheels. New bumpers. Ford and Chrysler have adopted the 2-mile-per-hour impact-rated bumpers that GM has already had for 2 years. They have President Nixon to thank for their cost-saving tardiness in bumping. In late 1970, Ralph Nader pressured Congress into mandating 5-mile-per-hour impact bumpers by 1973, and passenger crash cushions or airbags by 1975. On April 27, 1971, Henry Ford II and Ford Vice President Lee Iacocca came to the White House to argue that airbags and 5-mile-per-hour bumpers would balloon car prices, ruin the gas mileage, acceleration, and handling, since hundreds of pounds would be added to the curb weight. The safety saints had been flogging the horror of high-speed crashes, which they said could be mitigated by Big Brother bumpers in a Cold War of kinetic energy. The consumer was to benefit from the bumpers with lower repair costs, but the airbags cost several $100s. Iacocca begged Nixon to keep it a consumer and cost issue to avoid mission creep. Iacocca implored Nixon, "These hippies, these back-to-nature nuts, think they're the deep thinkers, that they're the yin and yang gang. Well, Mr. President, I'm the gasoline Maharaja, and I'm the one saying everything is connected. You want more oil imports from the Mideast? Rising gas prices? You make a 73 Pinto that weighs as much as a 63 Falcon." Iacocca later admitted he had learned the tirade by heart, claiming, "I could recite it backwards." Iacocca showed some pictures of Ford's 5-mile-per-hour impact prototype cars, and Nixon was so viscerally repulsed by the massive bumpers, he decided to nip Ralph Nader's airbags and bumpers in the bud. He made the standard 2 miles per hour and delayed it until 1974. Then, in 72, as whipping inflation now became the priority, he dumped the costly airbags too. GM has already planned for the 5-mile-per-hour standard and airbags. GM was able to make the 2-mile-per-hour standard early by 1972 and is now alone in offering airbags as an expensive option on its big cars. Though GTS is now second banana to the new Elite Mini T-Bird Torino, bucket seats and a center console with floor shifter are still very swank and sporting. Our car also had air conditioning, power steering and brakes, cruise control, and an expensive AM/FM stereo radio. Add in the freewheeling package and the MSRP was $5,500 with more than $1,700 in options. The GTS model included an excellent rally instrument panel with a tachometer. Swank stereo tape player provided great audio fidelity. The 352 Cobra Jet, also known as 352 4V, is boosted from 246 horsepower to 255 horsepower and remains Ford's most powerful engine. It's available only on the new mid-size Cougar and Torino. It is no longer available in the new small Mustang, making Intermediate's FOMOCO's fastest cars for 74. Air conditioning is optional despite the 5,400 RPM power peak. AC requires power steering, also be ordered. Powertrain. With advances in precision racing parts and execution by more competent racing teams, the 352 Cleveland, with the same polyangled valves as the 429, has been made to rev higher and more durably. The 352 also retains a tactical racing advantage in fuel consumption. Ford is so committed to the 352 that it is canceling the 429 in passenger cars. The GTS can be had with a standard 140 horsepower 302 or an optional 163 horsepower 352, 170 horsepower 402, or 220 horsepower dual exhaust 464 barrel. But the top choice is the Cobra Jet 352 4V, rated at 255 horsepower at 5,400 RPM. This is the highest power peak in Intermediates by 1,000 RPM, and it even beats the hottest Corvette 350 V8 by 200 RPM. The 312 foot-pounds of torque at 3,600 RPM is unchanged from the 73 Cobra Jet. The 352 uses a 7.9 to 1 compression ratio and high-flow heads with relatively large 2.04-inch intake and 1.65-inch exhaust valves. The 352 4V still offers a choice of a Hurst-shifted 4-speed manual transmission. However, the quickest accelerating GTS uses a heavy-duty C6 select shift automatic, fitted with a higher stall speed 2.4 to 1 ratio torque converter that offers more multiplication at low RPM. Stiff front police coils and rear station wagon coils make the GTS ride 1.4 inches higher, much like AMC's The Machine supercar. The ride is stiff, but handling is excellent. Our day at the Riverside Test Track left us more than satisfied that our 352 freewheeling Gran Torino Sport is Ford's fastest 74 car. The engine gives an impression of effortless and immediate power and very pleasing instant throttle response. Most importantly, it retains the old-fashioned high RPM crescendo of 60s supercar engines. We think this is the 352's best aspect. It's something you just can't get in other Intermediates and in only a handful of other cars. Intake velocity and vacuum have increased with the slightly smaller valves used than the Boss, also known as HO, of 1972. This gives it a more authoritative mid-range response. The newly standard DuraSpark electronic ignition gets rid of the points and condenser and helps burn the fuel mixture more efficiently. The test car was mighty off the mark thanks to the drag-oriented torque converter. Combined with the massive rear tires and traction lock axle, it was easy to avoid boiling the hides off the line in our acceleration trials. We held the transmission in first gear all the way to 60 miles per hour in only 7.4 seconds, where the engine turned 5,900 RPM. The engine was turning 5,000 RPM in second gear when we crossed the quarter-mile traps in 15.5 seconds at 86 miles per hour. We once held 15 seconds as the line between supercars and budget or junior supercars, but for 74, this performance ranks close to the top. The 325 axle ratio offers eager highway throttle response with no need for an automatic kickdown in passing, except for kicks. And as we soon discovered, those kicks are far from free of charge. Top speed easily reached 125 miles per hour in our 5-mile test strip, a feat very few cars have accomplished in the past 2 years. Ride and handling. The shorter wheelbase chassis is stiffer, which effectively aids the suspension spring rates and geometry. It also helps in the low-speed pylon slalom. It brings back that quick size handling, although there's no ignoring the full-size width either. The 2-mile-per-hour impact-rated bumpers add 50 pounds, all told, mostly offsetting the 70-pound weight loss from the 4-inch cut in wheelbase. The aluminum wheels further reduce curb weight, cutting the total under 4,200 pounds, which isn't too bad for a loaded senior intermediate. The higher, stiffer rear station wagon springs even have an effect of cushioning the tires from the engine torque and preventing axle hop at breakaway. They make for a harder ride that gives the car more neutral steering in the bends. It is more willing to change directions and flatter cornering when it does. Ironically, the meaty hot rod rear tires hang on longer before breaking traction and help compensate for the oversteer tendency of higher rate rear springs. The big radial tires also contribute to an acceptable ride in spite of the stiffer coils. Even these fat radials roll easier and keep more of the tire in contact with the road than bias belted tires. They resisted locking up on our full panic stop. From 60 miles per hour, we halted on only 143 feet and in an admirably stable and nearly smokeless manner, though the car's attitude had more nosedive than we're used to, an impression intensified by the built-in suspension rake. Out on the open road, the car is surprisingly tight, quiet, and smooth. The only complaint we had was some highway wander at lower speeds, as it seemed that only above 60 miles per hour would the car settle down and point straight without undue tiller correcting. The gas filler is raised higher behind a panel door instead of behind the license plate. The bumper is moved downward to accommodate Ford's frame-mounted leaf spring retracting mechanism. Big vinyl strips protect the bumper itself from scratches and are standard equipment. The new wraparound taillights obviate the need for side marker lamps. Economy. The original 69 Cobra 352 4-barrel Fairlane was never a fuel sipper, but it did get decent mileage compared to the 427 and 429 Mega Mills. The latest 4V352 is also no economy run champion, and decreased compression ratios make it less efficient than ever. The first time we filled the gas tank, we were amazed it held 26.5 gallons, considering how quickly we emptied it. We were able to squeeze out 13 miles per gallon on a very mellow highway jaunt, where we set the cruise control at 62 miles per hour. So if you drive like your grandma, you might still afford to be able to feed both the car and yourself. But around town, the gas mileage plunges into the single digits. On our day of performance testing, we computed gas mileage of 8 miles per gallon, and that included the long drive to and from the track. The engine's carburetor flows 25% more CFM even than the 460's carb. When you drive hard, it drinks hard. That's lousy mileage, but it's above average for one of 1974's quickest cars. Looking at other fish in the sea, the only stronger intermediate is the 441 cubic inch Dodge Charger Rally with 275 horsepower. This is the only true 14-second ET intermediate still standing, but we found the big block Charger along with the 235 horsepower Chevelle SS 454 we also tested are lucky to crack 11 miles per gallon wafting along at 60 miles per hour. The verdict. With the Mustang's demotion to a sporty 2+2 economy car, Ford's fastest worm has turned back to an intermediate. It's nice having a quick car that can comfortably hold 5 people instead of just 2. The Torino lends itself to high-speed human hauling in a more relaxed and serene cocoon than the little Mustang. As a cut-down LTD, it has a pleasantly unperturbed poise in regular driving. The 352 mil never feels strained and can repeat full throttle acceleration runs without engine heat buildup. While it is possible to order the 352 4-barrel on any GTS, the freewheeling package is the only way you get the aluminum wheels and bigger rear tires, though you can still order 14-inch Magnum 500 chrome steel rims. Some of us fell in love with the giant stripe immediately, and some loathed it until handing the keys back to Ford, but the car is the stripe. In the end, if you don't like the stripe, you don't want the car. The freewheeling GTS delivers on its street machine image while bumping and exhausting in a politically acceptable fashion. Though the freewheeling GTS can't really compete with the original Torino Cobra in acceleration, it certainly seizes the attention of the general public. Everywhere we drove, we attracted rubbernecking and double takes. It's a fun and flamboyant factory hot rod amid a 1974 sea of sleepy opera windows and tacky padded vinyl roofs.